At 6,000 meters, huge eagles drop fresh kills to feed people who survived a plane crash. This is when Captain Kowalski learns that these birds are more than just birds. They are guards of a doorway between worlds. November 7th, 1989. With winds of more than 120 kilometers per hour, a terrible storm hit the Himalayas. At 7,000 meters, the temperature dropped to a very cold, minus 58 degrees Celsius. Captain Marek Kowalski looked over the flight plan one last time on Malaysian Airlines Flight 192. He had flown 15,000 hours, so his hands were rough and had the first signs of age spots on them. He was 47 years old and had been looking at the dangerous air currents in the Himalayas for more than 20 years. He felt an odd knot tightening in his stomach. "Weather's clearing ahead," Second Officer Piotr Wisniewski said, but his voice shook, showing that he wasn't sure what to say. The flight log said that there were 167 people on board, businessmen carrying briefcases with contracts worth a lot of money, a group of Buddhist monks on their way to the annual journey, their faces calm even though the plane was shaking violently. The famous mountain climber Jan Steiner and his 5-person team, their eyes shining with excitement as they prepared to reach another peak. No one thought that these might be their last hours on Earth. At 1843 local time, the plane went through rough weather. The lights in the cabin flickered, masks for oxygen fell, kids screamed, a waitress tripped in the hall, and a cart full of drinks fell to the ground. M192 to control, Kowalski said in a calm voice, even though everything was going crazy, experiencing severe turbulence, requesting permission to descend to 7,600 feet. Static cut his words in half. On radar screens in Kathmandu, Flight M192 was no longer seen, like they were sucked up by the mountains. 12 planes and search teams looked through the area where the crash might have happened for 3 long weeks. They had to deal with blizzards and temperatures so low that their eyelashes would freeze. Some of Earth's harshest landscapes were in the search area. There were valleys so deep that sunshine never reached the floors, and peaks so sharp that they had never felt human footprints. They didn't find anything, not a single piece of broken stuff, not a single bag tag, not a single person is left. The Nepalese government publicly ended the search operation on December 9th, 1989. All 167 people on board were pronounced dead. Death records were given out. Insurance issues are handled. There were memorial events. For the families, the nightmare had just begun, the unique pain of loss that never ends. The wives waited by the phones, but they never rang. Kids looked through the crowds at airports, sure they'd see their dads. Every year, mothers held onto photos that were getting worse for wear. Flight M192 became one of aviation's unsolved riddles as people slowly forgot about it. June 2023. Tomasz Nowak saw the eastern face of Kangchenjunga. It looked like a wall of ice and dark. He was 56 years old, and the cold morning made his joints creak. Over 30 years, he had climbed the world's most dangerous hills, leaving deep lines around his eyes. He would leave behind this route, which most hikers think is impossible. 4 people had already died on the eastern hill. It was called Korka by the Sherpas who lived there, which means Wheel of the Death Goddess. They said in whispers that it watched over a way to get to the afterlife. Anna Wojcik, 38, had climbed all 14 8,000ers. Jakub Hoffman, an Australian doctor with a military background. Mikhail Park, whose camera had captured images of disaster zones around the world. And Tenzin, a third-generation Sherpa guide, who knew the mountain better than any map. This was Tomasz's team. At 6,200 meters on the 3rd day, their compasses were all over the place. GPS units lost contact even though the sky was clear. Batteries and equipment died for no reason. Iron deposits in the rock, Jakub said. No one seemed to be sure. When dawn came on the 4th day, there was a scary sight. Anna was the first to see them, a huge group of Himalayan griffins flying around a point about a half kilometer from camp. 2 huge eagles with wings that were 3 meters across flew among them. Tenzin burst into tears as he saw what he saw and began to pray. "What is it?" Tomasz asked, his voice rising in concern. "Kamtruma," Tenzin said in a low voice. "Guardian spirits. They protect souls trapped between worlds." The birds flew over one place and made perfect loops above it, then came back to it with an uncanny accuracy. When one of the eagles dove out of the sky and hit the snow, Tomasz felt something deep inside move. They changed their route from what they had planned. As they got closer, the raptors' strange behavior got worse. They would drop down near their heads and then fly back to the same spot on the ground. Michał drove his ice axe into the snow where an eagle had hit. Below, metal hit metal with a dull clang. After 15 minutes of hard work, a piece of white hull with a blue-red stripe was found, the colors of Malaysian Airlines. As Tomasz brushed off more snow, his shaking hands showed part of a license plate number, M192. "My God," Anna said in a whisper, and you could see her breath in the thin air. "We found it." Flight M192 had been missing for 34 years when it was found in a place that search teams could never have reached, a hill that not even the best hikers in the world thought was impossible to get up. Above them, the eagles kept flying around in a careful pattern. The beautiful birds stayed in the sky while the team dug deeper. As they worked, there was nervous quiet. The only sounds were hard breathing and tools rubbing against metal and ice. Tomasz looked up at the gods flying around every few minutes. The biggest eagle, with wings that were easily 3 meters across, flew in a perfect circle above the wreckage. Its golden eyes looked around with a scary level of knowledge. When it bent its wings to bank, feathers that were the color of polished copper shone in the sun. Michał lowered his camera and said, "I've studied Himalayan wildlife for 15 years. These aren't ordinary birds. The size alone is impossible at this altitude." Tenzin wouldn't look at them straight on. "My grandfather told stories of the Kamtruma. They appear only where the veil between worlds thins." By evening, they had found a piece of fuselage with 4 windows that were still in place. The sign for Malaysian Airlines came out in a ghostly white on top of the blue metal, having been frozen for 30 years. "These birds," Anna spoke up, breaking the anxious silence. "They wanted us to find this." As it got dark, the team set up camp next to the ruins. Their satellite phone said it had a full charge, but there was no connection. They were the only ones who knew about their finding. Tenzin finally told them the whole story that night, as they huddled in their tent and the wind howled across the ice. The Kamtruma take the form of great birds to guard souls in transition. When they circle one place, it means souls are trapped there, unable to move on. "But why lead us here now, after 34 years?" Jakub asked me. He answered, maybe they were waiting for the right people. When Tomasz woke up in the morning, there was a loud crash outside their tent. When he opened the door, he saw a mountain goat that had just been killed lying in the snow. The biggest eagle was perched on a rock ledge 50 meters above, its eyes fixed on the people. "It's bringing us food," Anna whispered, her voice full of shock. Tenzin wasn't surprised like they were. "My people have stories of Kamtruma feeding lost travelers." The strange gift took away any doubts that were still there. These were not your average hunters acting on impulse. The birds were talking, directing, giving, and watching. Michał took dozens of pictures of the eagles as they started digging again that morning. In one shot, an eagle flew down toward the rubble, and its shadow made a clear outline of a person in the snow. Each hour that went by made the puzzle deeper. What were these creatures really guarding? And why did they pick this trip to share the secret that had been kept for decades? By noon, they had gotten rid of enough of the debris to see a sharp tear in the midsection. The hole was just big enough for a person. The moving weight of the dugout snow made the plane's metal skin creak. "Someone should go inside," Tomasz said, but the thin mountain air made his voice sound hollow. Anna, who was the smallest in the group, volunteered with him. Before going through the gap, They put up safety lines and turned on their headlights. In 1989, the inside of the cabin stayed frozen. Oxygen masks hung down like dried vines. A half-eaten airplane meal was sitting on a tray table. The cold kept the solid bits from melting. The Berlin Wall could still be seen in a magazine that was sitting on a chair. It was dead quiet, like a tomb that had been locked for 30 years. "Look for the black boxes," Tomasz told them, his voice too loud, for the past capsule to normally be able to hear. Anna carefully moved forward, and her crampons scraped the uneven floor. She found a leather bag in the first row of seats. As she opened it, her gloves hands shook. She called out, "Climbing gear," and a journal. Tomasz joined her, and his light showed that an ice axe had the name Jan Steiner carved into it. The famous mountaineer's passport and a leather-bound notebook that had been through a lot were both lying nearby. As Tomasz opened it, his fingers moved slowly and with respect. The first note was written on November 8, 1989, one day after the crash. His throat tightened as he said, "Of 167 souls, only 47 survived the impact. Captain Kowalski is organizing us. Wreckage provides shelter. Food supplies limited. Outside temperature minus 40 degrees Celsius." The last entry made him stop in his tracks. December 16th, 1989, which was more than a month after the plane went missing. "The tunnel is complete. We're heading out at dawn. The captain says we must descend the southeast face. The eagles have disappeared. Last night I saw that strange blue light again on the rocks. It pulses like a living heart. The monks say it's a transition path to another realm. If anyone finds this diary, know we fought to the end." Anna's light beam was clearly shaking. They survived the crash for weeks. They pushed deeper into the plane, past rows of empty seats and into the pilot's seat. As the plane hit the ground, the readings on the instrument panel went dark and quiet. The notebook for Captain Kowalski stayed in its place. Compass still acting strangely, needle spins counterclockwise. Emergency generator powers instruments, but readings don't make sense. Altimeter shows minus 2,000 meters, even though we're clearly above 6,000 meters, someone wrote on November 28th. It was the last sentence that made me feel the most uneasy. The night radio man tried the emergency transmitter, heard voices in an unknown language. This place distorts reality itself. Tomasz and Anna found a makeshift camp deeper inside the frozen fuselage. Airline sheets were used to make simple beds. The oxygen tanks were carefully lined up in rows, and each one had a tally mark on it that showed how much oxygen was being used. Food packages were neatly arranged, which showed that budgeting was very strict. In the middle was Captain Kowalski's command post, which was a first-class seat surrounded by hand-drawn maps, lists of supplies, and job schedules written on torn magazine pages. It wasn't the chaos of fear that was left behind. It was the planned work of people who were still alive and expected to be rescued. Their scary story was written in Steiner's notebook. The plane was torn in half by the first collision. People in the back area died right away. The people who were still alive woke up in the forward cabin to screaming and darkness. Many of them were seriously hurt. 12 more people died that first night. There was no doubt that Captain Kowalski was in charge. As a former soldier who later became a pilot, he set up strict rules. Each person was only allowed 100 milliliters of water a day. Food had to be carefully measured. Movements had to be done every hour to prevent frostbite. And jobs had to be switched so that rescue planes could always be seen. Day 9, Tomasz read out loud. "Marta died last night. Chest injuries worse than we thought. The captain led a burial service. That makes 16 dead since the crash. Temperature inside the cabin drops to minus 30 degrees Celsius at night, despite our efforts to insulate. The captain insists we maintain daily hygiene and exercise. Says keeping humanity keeps death away. By day 14, there was less and less chance of being saved. Supplies ran out. The survivors were tortured by hypothermia and mountain sickness." Then came the oddest entry. Day 17, something remarkable happened. The giant eagles appeared this morning, circling our wreckage. At noon, one dropped a mountain goat carcass near our shelter. Still warm, the monks say the birds are guardian spirits. Every day, the eagles came back with new kills, like goats, marmots, and smaller birds. This miraculous help kept them alive for weeks longer. Things got worse as November turned into December. A lot of snow covered the ruins even more. Oxygen levels dropped. More survivors died from injuries and getting too sick at high altitudes. Day 36 read the last few pages. Only 18 of us remain. The captain says we must attempt descent or perish here. We've spent 3 days digging a tunnel through the snow. Tomorrow we leave, following the southeast ridge. The monks spent the night in meditation before the glowing rocks. They claim it's a doorway, not death, that awaits us. The last writing was very simple. We go into the light. Anna found a folded picture in the last few pages of the journal. It showed Captain Kowalski standing with his arm around Steiner, both of their faces bare but determined, against a background of snow and bent metal. As night fell over the crash site, the air became so cold that exhalations were frozen in the air. The team looked at the proof they'd gathered while huddling around a portable stove inside their tent. Outside, the eagles kept their watch, their dark shapes standing out against the sky full of stars. Jakob looked at his gear with a frown. This makes no sense. My compass is spinning like a carnival ride. He put it down on a flat surface. The needle spun around and around, going clockwise and counterclockwise at times, as if it were being pulled by 2 different magnetic poles. GPS says we're 2 kilometers west of where we really are, Mikhail said, pointing to his device, and it keeps changing. The satellite phone was used again by Tomasz. No signal, full juice. Electronics don't malfunction simultaneously unless something's interfering. They went back to the log kept by Captain Kowalski. In the weeks after the crash, his careful notes showed that the instruments were acting in more and more strange ways. Altimeters that show negative heights. In a matter of seconds, thermometers go from plus 35 degrees Celsius to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Radios pick up sounds, speaking languages that aren't known. The captain wrote that all instruments failed simultaneously just before impact, Anna said. He described seeing a strange blue light on the mountainside moments before the crash. Tenzin finally spoke up after being quiet for a while. My people know this mountain has power. It bends things that should not bend, light, sound, time. It was around midnight when Jakub's medical tools started acting strangely. Tomasz's body temperature was 57 degrees Celsius on his digital monitor, which is too low for a live person. They saw it after that. A pulsing blue glow came from somewhere on the hillside and through the thin fabric of the tent. Not the steady beam of a flashlight or the flicker of a fire, but a natural, steady pulse like a heartbeat. When they came out, they saw a spiral of blue light slowly spinning on a rock face 300 meters away. When Tomasz pointed his flashlight at the thing that was happening, the beam bent away from it, as if it were being pushed away. The light that Steiner wrote about in his journal, Anna said in a low voice. At that very moment, Jakub's satellite phone suddenly turned on after being off for hours. It made a series of beeps and breaks instead of a link. Morse code, Jakob knew what it meant. He quickly found paper and typed up the order. It came out in 3 words. We live elsewhere. The light was gone by morning. The eagles stayed put, and their behavior became more focused. They kept flying around the path between the plane and where they had seen the strange thing. Mika too chose pieces of dirt from both places. His magnetic instruments showed values 50 times stronger than Earth's usual field strength, where the blue light was coming from. When metal items were put on the ground, they turned toward the strange thing, like iron filings around a magnet. Science didn't have any answers for what they were feeling. The rock itself didn't seem to follow any rules of physics. The pulsing blue light showed up again the next night, but this time it was brighter than before. It started out as a point on the rock face and grew into a swirling vortex that was about 3 meters across. The glow filled the stone around it, making the firm rock look like it was made of glass. Tenzin tried to stop Michal, but she said, "I'm going to write it down." He started to climb toward the thing that was happening with his camera in hand. The birds responded right away. 3 of them flew down and blocked his way with their wings spread out. They didn't attack, but instead put up a shield in the air that made him have to go back to camp. "They don't want us near it," Anna said. "Not yet." That day, the team got more proof from the plane. They found a box belonging to the Buddhist monks in the luggage hold. Inside were old books and items used in rituals. One scroll had pictures of a blue portal that wound around and around and was watched over by things that looked like birds. Tenzin translated the faded writing, which said, "When the mountain breathes blue fire, the veil thins. The guardians show up to lead good souls through the path to Shambhala." That night, the light pulsed brighter and brighter. It looked like the snow around their camp had a strange blue tint to it. The static electricity in the air made the hairs on their arms stand up. Tomasz read Steiner's journal again, this time focused on the last few lines. The climber had carefully written down what the light did. The glow follows a 23-day cycle, growing stronger each night. The monks claim it reaches its peak when 3 stars align above the eastern ridge. They say the doorway opens fully only during this alignment. Tenzin's estimates of the stars showed that alignment would happen tomorrow night. Around midnight, Jakub's satellite phone sent out more Morse codes. When read, the message said, "Follow birds at dawn." The group didn't get much sleep. Throughout the night, the eagles were surprisingly busy, flying in paths that seemed more and more planned, always between the planes and the light source. The biggest eagle flew down with amazing accuracy at dawn and dropped something at Tomasz's feet, a faded leather wallet. There was Captain Kowalski's ID and a picture of his family inside. Handwritten on the back, "Pass through light, new life, do not seek us here." The date was December 17th, 1989, one day after Steiner's last writing in his notebook. When morning came, the light was gone for good, but a perfect circle of melted snow on the rock face showed where it had been. Below, strange crystal forms reflected light in strange ways. When Tomasz felt these crystals, he had visions of flying over mountains like an eagle and seeing a landscape that was similar to the Himalayas, but slightly different, with buildings with impossible architecture tucked into valleys that didn't exist in their world. He took his hand away, shaking. "I saw somewhere else." The survivors' getaway route was found on the 5th day of exploring. The team followed the eagle's lead and found a path dug through hard-packed snow that led from the plane's escape exit. The tunnel went 20 meters before coming out on a small ledge. Anna was amazed as she looked at the tool marks in the ice and said, "They dug this by hand, in -40-degree temperatures, at this altitude." The ledge ended at a 500-meter tall wall of ice that fell into darkness. Without special tools, which the surviving did not have, descent would not have been possible. "This doesn't make sense," Jakub insisted as he looked over the edge. "They couldn't have gone down. Their bodies would be at the bottom." But a close look through binoculars showed that there was no sign of 18 people having fallen, no bodies, no tools, and nothing else that would suggest they had. The blue light could only be reached by one other way. They found more proof of the survivors' last days in the tail part of the plane. A fire escape had been opened from the inside, dozens of eagle feathers grouped in a circle around it. In the middle was a small metal object that looked like an old Tibetan charm of a being with wings. Kam Truma, Tenzin called it, the guardian spirits. Footprints that were frozen in the cabin showed the way to the blue light from this exit. In the last steps, there were 18 different people going in a single line. Core samples were taken from the rock face, where the event had been seen by the team. Using Jakub's movable tools for analysis, they found molecular structures with atoms grouped in ways that were not possible according to known physics. When night came, the eagles' behavior changed a lot. They flew in a loop above the camp, their wings still as they rode thermal currents. The biggest bird had something in its beak and dropped it right at Tomasz's feet. A torn page from a notebook that is full of math and diagrams. Captain Kowalski wrote down in great detail what the light was made of, its energy fingerprints, radiation patterns, and regular changes. 2 times the last note was underlined, not a natural phenomenon. Below it, a quick note. If you find this, we chose to go through. The monks say it's a doorway, not death. The eagles confirmed it somehow. They've been guiding us since the crash. We leave these records behind as proof we lived. We go forward voluntarily. The page was signed by all 18 survivors. The blue light came back at night, stronger than ever. As the swirling design grew, it cast strange shadows on the snow. Things within 5 meters of the ground started to float slightly above it, defying gravity. There was another passage from the monk's scrolls that Tenzin translated. It said, "The doorway opens fully when 3 worlds align: eagle sight, human heart, and mountain spirit. Those who pass through shed their earthly form, but retain their essence." The impossible truth began to become clear. People who were still alive hadn't died on this mountain. They were no longer there at all. The 3-star arrangement that Steiner wrote about in his diary came about on the 6th day of the team's work. During the day, they took science readings around the crash site and the spot where the blue light was seen. Jakob's medical tools found that the radiation levels were changing wildly. They weren't dangerous, but they were following patterns that didn't match any known radioactive element. He said, "It's like the rocks are breathing, expanding and contracting on an atomic level." Mikau took samples of dirt that had metal pieces in them that had strange properties. When put close to each other, they turned in certain directions no matter what the gravity was like. The crystalline structures looked like they were shifting and rearranging into new shapes as he looked at them through his handheld microscope. "This goes against basic laws of physics," he said, his voice tight with scientific shock. The most shocking results came from looking at the DNA in the eagle feathers. While most of them matched known species of Himalayan eagle, some had genetic markers that had never been found in any Earth organisms. These were protein structures that shouldn't be found in earthly biology. The team got together at sunset to see the arrangement of the stars. An isosceles triangle was made when 3 stars showed over the mountain ridge at the same time. As soon as they lined up, the blue spiral appeared with a level of ferocity that had never been seen before. The light now had qualities that went beyond what we could see. It caused gravity distortions that could be seen. Small things that were put around the edges moved in spiral patterns. When sound waves were sent toward it, they came back with different frequencies. In Captain Kowalski's personal belongings, they found a folded piece of paper hidden in his uniform jacket. It had full mathematical formulae for what current quantum physicists would call an Einstein-Rosen bridge or wormhole. These equations, he said quietly, they weren't developed until the 2010s. How could a commercial pilot in 1989 have formulated them? Most unsettling was the last note on Kowalski's calculations. Convergence point confirmed. Passage requires quantum synchronization with guides. It looks like the guides were the eagles, whose DNA had those strange differences. When it got really dark, the 3-star formation was at its highest point. The blue spiral grew until it was almost 10 meters across, which was its biggest size yet. The temperature dropped very quickly, but the air around it sparkled like heat waves. Right above this tornado, the eagles lined up in a perfect circle, with 18 birds staying in place despite the strong mountain winds. There were 18 birds left, which is the exact number of survivors. Tomasz carefully approached the event and put out his hand to touch its edge. As soon as his fingers touched the edge of the light, his whole body jerked as if he were shocked. He fell backwards, his eyes wide. When he came to, he gasped, "I saw them. All 18, they're alive, but different. They were trying to communicate." They found another charm inside his closed hand. It was the same as the one they found in the plane, but it looked brand new. The moment before, it wasn't there. Around Flight M192, the rules of science, biology, and even reality itself seemed to be broken. After 9 hard days on the mountain, the team went back to base camp to tell everyone about what they had found. Within a few weeks, a group of experts from 3 countries, Malaysian Airlines employees, and government inspectors arrived. The official study agreed with what the team found, but it couldn't go any further in describing what happened to the survivors. The black box that was found in the cabin only had some of the data that it was supposed to have. The last few seconds before impact were missing and were replaced by 18 seconds of strange sound, a harmonic tone that audio experts couldn't tell was either mechanical or human. Scientists found that the mountain had an unusually high amount of rare earth metals, mostly neodymium and gadolinium, which are known for having strong magnetic qualities. But these couldn't explain the strange things that had been seen or why the eagles were still there. To meet Tomasz, the widow of Captain Kowalski went to Nepal. She was shaking as she held her own book, which had notes of her dreams from the past 30 years. She told him, "He visits me," and her eyes were clear and sure, always with the same message, "I'm alive, but not here. The place we found is beautiful. Don't mourn me." She told him that a few days before his last flight, he had had a strange dream in which he flew through a tube of light and was surrounded by huge birds with human eyes. When he woke up, he said something that had been on her mind for 34 years. "If something happens to me, know that I didn't die. I just crossed over to another place." People who lived in villages below Kangchenjunga told their own stories. Strangers showed up in their remote valley in January 1990, weeks after the crash. They had strange accents when they spoke the local language and knew a lot about the mountains. After staying for a short time, they left going east, leaving behind small amulets in the shape of spirals. Elders in the area said that these guests had strange skills, like being able to see avalanches coming hours before they happened, talk to birds, and find water sources where none were known to exist. The picture Michał took on their last day at the wreckage was the most interesting. It showed an eagle in flight, and its shadow on the snow looked like a person. The picture wasn't changed because it was checked by 3 different labs. Scientists set up a fixed station to watch over the crash spot. The birds come back every year on the date in November. The blue light shows up every year at the same time when 3 stars are lined up. Every year, new amulets show up at the spot, but no people have been seen there. Locals now call the eastern face of Kangchenjunga the bird path, because they say that on clear nights you can see the elsewhere through the mountain's heart. The Malaysian Airlines flight is still officially listed as crashed with casualties, but there is now an unofficial note in the aviation records that says, "Subsequent evidence suggests indeterminate outcome for 18 survivors." The birds were the part of the story that stuck around the longest. Unlike the blue light, which only showed up when certain cosmic pairings happened, the birds stayed over the crash site all year long. Every known fact about hawk biology was broken by their actions. Wildlife scientists who went on later trips wrote down notes that had never been made before. Even though they were in the area all the time, the eagles didn't build any nests. In contrast to all other known eagle species, they did not attack each other over territory. Strangest of all, they didn't seem to be affected by the high altitude. They were able to fly easily at heights where the thin air should have made it impossible to stay in the air for long periods of time. Another strange thing that thermal imaging showed was that the birds' body temps stayed 15 degrees below what any known bird species could handle. When researchers tried to track them with radio tags, the devices stopped working within hours, giving researchers data that showed them in places that weren't possible, sometimes at the same time, hundreds of kilometers apart. Michał Pak released his photography study of the eagles, Wings Over the Abyss, 5 years after they were first found. The most disturbing picture showed the biggest eagle sitting on the belly of an airplane at morning. When scientists looked closely at its eyes, they saw shapes that didn't match the scenery around it. It was like the bird was seeing something other than what the camera could see. Shepherds in the area said they saw the birds in places they wouldn't normally be seen. Eagles flew down into valleys 50 kilometers from the crash site to watch kids play. Sometimes they dropped small stones in the shape of spirals at the kids' feet. People in the town said that when those same kids got sick, birds would sit at their windows and wait patiently until they got better. Scientists who studied the crash site for long amounts of time got a strange illness. Brain scans showed more activity in parts of the brain that are linked to figuring out where things are in space. A lot of people said they had dreams about flying through crystal settings. In their own time, 3 experts made almost similar pictures of a mountainous area they didn't know, with buildings that didn't look like anything humans have built before. Thermal cameras that were put up to watch the spot all year long were the most convincing proof. During the winter, when people couldn't get to the mountain, the eagles would hang out in exact geometric shapes around where the blue light was. From above, these shapes looked like complicated math equations. These were the same equations that Captain Kowalski used to describe the features of wormholes in his notes. Tomasz Nowak went back to the crash site by himself on the 10th anniversary of when it was found. The eagles flew in a line next to his plane to protect him. He has never fully talked about what he went through in those 3 days. He quit professional climbing when he got back and started the Threshold Foundation to study physics between dimensions. His only comment: "They aren't birds watching over a grave, they're sentinels guarding a doorway, and sometimes messengers carrying words between worlds." There were 34 years between the crash and the finding. Another 10 years have passed since Tomasz Nowak's team first found the fuselage that was bent on that impossible hill. Still, the story of Flight M192 continues to inspire people all over the world. This riddle has staying power because it has just the right amount of things that can be explained and things that can't be explained. Scientists confirmed the crash, wrote down what the survivors did in their first few days, confirmed the mountain's strange magnetic properties, and made a list of the eagle's strange behavior. These real-world facts give the story a sense of truth. But the final fate of the 18 survivors is still gloriously unknown. Did they die while desperately trying to get down the mountain? Did they all fall asleep at the same time because of the high air and the trauma? Or did they really go to another world by going through some magical doorway? This lack of clarity turns their story from a simple plane crash into a modern myth that touches on people's greatest questions about life. For families who were suffering, the options were valuable alternatives to the grim truth. For years, I imagined him suffering, frozen and afraid. Now I can picture him continuing, changed but persisting. "That makes all the difference," Captain Kowalski's wife said. Aviation experts are looking into the case to see what it means for flying safety in areas with strange magnetic fields. Physicists look at the observed events to learn more about quantum physics and the features of theoretical wormholes. Scholars of religion have found similarities between stories of transcendence from different faiths. Each year, new movies, books, and research studies keep coming out. Every generation reads the story again and finds themes that are relevant to their own lives, such as spiritual reassurances, stories that teach us about technology, and signs about the environment. What might be most interesting about the puzzle is that it leaves room for different interpretations without forcing answers. When hearing the story of Flight M192, everyone has to figure out how to fit the facts into their own idea of what truth is. Skeptics see it as proof of how harsh situations can change how people think and feel. It says that the world has doors that we can't normally understand for people who are looking for spiritual answers. Scientists are interested in it because it gives them interesting data points that could one day be linked to bigger ideas of quantum reality. The crash site itself is still incredibly easy to get to, but stubbornly obscure. People who visit say they have problems with their gear, their compass goes off, and they dream of flying for months afterward, even though they don't need to be expert mountain climbers to get there anymore because of known paths. And the eagles always fly around above, keeping watch over us with their 18 quiet wings for decades. They keep following the same exact patterns, standing guard at the edge of what is known and what is unknown, between what people accept and what they are still trying to understand. In the end, maybe this is why the story lives on. Not because it gives us confidence, but because it keeps the possibility alive. The hope that beyond our last moments, there's not an end, but an opening.